welcome to our Innovate 2023 panel discussion, Navigating the New Normal, Takeaways from Leading Enrollment Professionals. I'm Lauren Gold, the Vice President of Client Success for Capture Higher Ed, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. The world of higher ed recruitment, marketing, and enrollment management has changed drastically post-pandemic. I think we can all agree to that. And today we're going to hear from enrollment leaders from a variety of institutions from all corners of the country and find out how they are adapting to and navigating the new normal of higher ed recruitment. I'm so excited for our guests today. I want to give you a little intro for each of them as they come on camera for us. So our guests today are Caitlin Shear. She's the Senior Director of Integrated Enrollment Marketing and Communications at George Mason University. Hi, Caitlin. We've got Jonathan Shores, the Executive Vice President for Enrollment Management at the University of Cumberland. Joanne Landers, Vice President of Enrollment Management and Communications at Plymouth State University, and Jennifer Creech, Vice President for Enrollment Management and the Associate Provost for Student Success at Chaminade University of Honolulu. Like I said, all corners of the U.S. covered today. Thank you for joining me, everyone. First things first, I think we have to set the stage because I've heard some crazy different hybrid layouts of work environments happening over the past 3 years. And I think we owe it to all of our audience today to just kind of set the stage for what kind of work life you have right now. What is the current office remote hybrid setup for you and your employees? And then we'll get started into the deep questions. So Jennifer, we'll start with you. What kind of setup do you guys have today? Oh, I think you're still muted.
I would say that we are still trying to navigate exactly what that's going to look like. We have some remote employees that are physically remote in different locations in the United States. And then the rest of our team is in person with flexible schedules. So we don't have a specific work flex schedule policy. It's pretty much what it was prior to COVID, with the exception of a handful of employees that are fully remote.
Awesome. Caitlin, what about at GMU?
Well, in Virginia, the governor strongly suggested that all public employees work in the office 3 days a week. So we are 3 days a week in the office and 2 days a week virtual. And we do, just like Jennifer, we have some people who transitioned fully, but just a handful to fully remote.
Mm-hmm. And for those 3 days in office, are they 3 days the same days for everyone, or are you guys
not always, right? I mean, for my small team, we try to all be in the office on Wednesdays so we can have content and longer meetings all together.
Great. Joanne, what about on your campus?
We're pretty much on campus as a student-facing office. Folks are in the office, ready to be there for students to assist them in their needs. I mean, should something come up, we're flexible. So if there's a reason why someone needs to be remote on a certain day, we're going to let that happen, but primarily in person.
Great. And Jonathan, what about at University of Cumberland?
Yeah, we are primarily 2 days a week. You can be remote or virtual, but then on Fridays, we actually have half-day Fridays. So we only work 8 to 12 on Fridays. All of our classes are Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. So the college as a whole basically works half-day Fridays, and some people strategically make that their day in office. So good on them, pretty smart.
Yeah, no kidding. That's like, I know a lot of campuses do summer Fridays. You get summer Fridays all year long. What a great setup. Well, I think with this group of experts we have in place today, our attendees are going to be very interested in gaining insights from each of you on the recruitment strategies you've put in place to address the concerns and priorities of this new generation of college applicants. We learned a lot about them while we were all working from home, and they definitely have a different outlook and different values in place, specifically on sustainability, diversity, work-life balance, a lot of things going on here that have shifted how we recruit the class. So our first question, big question for the panel today, and Jonathan, I'll let you answer this one first. How can universities adapt their recruitment strategies to align with these concerns and priorities of the current generation? given those factors that I just mentioned? And then also, what have you done with University of the Cumberlands that has been successful this year to market with that specific audience?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is right. All institutions are a little bit different in terms of who they serve and what particular type of student. Like at the University of Cumberland's, we're pretty big on serving students from rural Appalachia, right? So I think one of our big needs, and this kind of plays into what we do at the University of the Cumberland's, is listening to those students, listening to their concerns, as you can imagine in rural Appalachia. And I think this is kind of everywhere is. The cost of higher ed and how are students going to afford to be able to pay for education. And I saw a stat recently that said around 60% of students are concerned about how they're going to pay for it, and about 72% of parents are concerned about how they're going to pay for it. A little bit of a disconnect there between the students and the parents. But what we've done at the University of Cumberland is a couple of years ago, there's the tuition reset. And we kind of took a little bit of a different approach and said that we're going to do a tuition reduction. And so what we did was we basically said that tuition at a private institution is $9,800. And that includes everything, right? It's kind of what we call the one price promise. It's your tuition, your books, all the fees. If you're choosing to live on campus, that total cost is around $19,000, and that's all in. So trying to listen to those concerns. We're moving this year. We were able to get a pretty sizable grant, and I should also mention that about 3,000 of our students are on campus, with the remaining part being, online in some capacity. So we don't have a huge on-campus presence. I mean, a decent size, but not huge. So listening to those students and now taking it through kind of the fundraising efforts of the college to making it where no student will have more than $3,000 out of pocket every semester. And that's something we'll be unveiling here in the coming weeks. And that is all cost, right? Tuition, room, board, books, fees, everything. So for us, I think it's, serving the needs of the student. That's part of our mission as an institution, and hearing their concern.
Fantastic. That's an amazing opportunity for them. Caitlin, what about over at George Mason? What have you guys implemented this year to recruit specifically for this changing demographic?
Sure. So, I mean, obviously, to be able to recruit the students, you have to know specifically what their concerns and challenges are. And certainly from using capture tools in our campaigns, we've learned a lot more about the students that we served, and that has helped inform our strategies. Mason has a primary mission of access to higher ed. And so in that, this year we expanded 2 pathway programs, essentially to help some of the students that aren't considering Mason, that a 4-year degree is possible. These are largely local. This year we expanded an existing community college pathway program called Advance to other community colleges within the Virginia community college system. We have a nice relationship with Northern Virginia Community College that's been going on for a number of years, but we have now 3 other locations across the state, and it helps us leverage our online degree options for them, that kind of thing. Mason admits as many transfers as freshmen every year, so we have to take that into consideration, right, when we're developing these programs. We found that the students transferring from community college were coming in with about 15 credits that weren't counting towards the degree. And so these pathway programs help us address issues around cost, time, and completion, right, to degree. I'd say the other thing that we launched this fall was our own direct admit program. So we've participated in the Common App direct admit for a number of years, but this is a pilot program with 8 high schools in our sort of immediate neighborhood. And those high schools were chosen because of the higher percentage of free and reduced lunch students who qualify for that at those high schools. And we were able to work in partnership with those schools to share data, to extend offers of admission, just like you would, through Common App or one of the other programs, and offer them essentially a skinny app. That's what admissions calls it, to make it easier for them to complete. And we had people in the high schools at workshops helping them complete those applications. And that has been very productive for us. I think we offered 1,200 local students admission based on criteria agreed upon. And I think about 450 completed so far by our early action deadline. So it definitely shows us that we're getting students who wouldn't necessarily have thought about Mason or a 4-year degree.
Awesome. Jonathan, I'm going to go back to you for a minute because you got the first question of the day from our audience. Josh Hibbard wants to know that he says, thus far, many private institutions that conducted a tuition reset haven't fared so well. So what can you share about the effectiveness of your one price promise and the effect on enrollment and net tuition revenue?
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple layers to that, if you will. First, you got to do this from a position of strength, right? I think, I've worked with other institutions who have considered this and thought about this, and it's really coming from a position of, oh my gosh, we've got to lift enrollment and we've got to change things. So position of strength is the biggest thing. So when we did it, we don't call it a reset. Again, we call it a reduction because it was pretty much endowed. So we had the money to be able to fund that and offset the cost, and there is no intention of ever going back to that from our end. We have seen steady increase in our on-campus population. So much so we're at capacity, and the president has no plans to build any new dorms or any new facilities. He wants to invest all of that money back into lowering the cost as much as we can for students. So for the on-campus portion, I think we're kind of at our sweet spot, if you will. And so we had no plans to grow. We just have plans to kind of continue to fill the classes as best we can. But ever since that was announced, we had two really solid years of solid growth, like most institutions do. The third year was flat with the second year, and then we've increased, incrementally from there, and now we're at 98% capacity in dorms, and so really no more plans to grow anymore there on that population.
Awesome. Thank you.
I was just going to jump in and also say, to piggyback off of what Jonathan was talking about, Chaminade University also just did a Hawaii guarantee, which wasn't as much as a tuition reset as it was increasing awareness about the cost of a private education. And what we decided to do was match the resident tuition of the large in-state University of Hawaii, Manoa. And what we found when we were doing the research ahead of time is most of our students, our in-state resident students, were already either paying that same amount or even less than that amount. So what we needed to do was increase awareness to the cost, our cost. And we packaged it as the Hawaii guarantee. So any senior graduating that completed all of the requirements ahead of time was guaranteed the same tuition as if they were going to UH Manoa. And our in-state students, we saw a 30% increase in in-state students, 26% increase overall. And are at capacity. And like Jonathan mentioned, we have no intention of growing, maintaining, yes, but we've kind of hit our sweet spot of where we want to stay with our undergraduate enrollment. And we're going into our second year of this, and we've already seen the app growth and completion and deposits over 200% higher than where we were last year at this time, although it's early, but we are really seeing the benefits of starting this program.
Awesome. We have another question from the audience. Have you seen an increase in your enrollment goals given the positive changes that have occurred? Jonathan just shared what's happening at Cumberland. So did Jennifer. Any other feedback there?
I think we do. It's, everybody's looking at how do we prepare for the demographic cliff, especially coming. So I think a lot of schools are upping their goals and upping the budget goals and requirements for fall 24 and fall 25 in preparation for what's to come after fall 26. So I know for us, we've definitely seen an increase in goals, and from other colleagues I've heard across the country, definitely seeing increases. Some are very reasonable, a 5%, maybe 10% increase, depending on what your current numbers are. Some are a little more lofty goals for that, but I think it's much more of how can we try to give ourselves a cushion for what may end up happening in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, definitely. Joanne, I'm going to ask you the next question as well. So you just stay right there. Let's shift a little bit and let's talk about the platforms. And there's so much that has come available over the past several years from other ed tech vendors and different things that people are using and trying. And I think COVID gave us a chance to try things that campuses might have been hesitant to try in the past. So what are the platforms and approaches that have been successful for your campus in reaching this demographic? And specifically within social media recruitment, what are you doing there that has been beneficial?
Absolutely. I think one thing we're doing more is focusing more on the SEO side of it, the digital marketing side, and really trying to capture who's coming to your site and that data. How are you driving folks to your site? And what are they paying attention to on social media? What are they clicking? Do you have call to actions on your social media and not just here's Plymouth State, but what's your call to action? Is it visit campus? Is it apply now? Are you taking them to a microsite for a particular program, or are you getting them engaged in what student services have to offer? So a lot of it for us is being more intentional about what we're putting out on the platforms that's going to cross over between branding, but also having call to actions for that information and to really pull those students. And are we doing population segmented based on adult marketing, graduate marketing, your traditional 4-year, or are we doing just one broad digital marketing campaign? I think it's working better for us when we segment them and highlight potential majors and programs that students seem to be more interested in. And then also crossing that with the parents. What are we looking for with the parents? What majors are they thinking more of? Because even if it's not the same major, if you can catch that parent attention, you're more likely to catch the student attention as well.
Yes, let's dig in a little bit to social media in general. There's so many different platforms out there, and I think our minds automatically go to some of the oldies but goodies, Facebook and Instagram. But what are the other social media platforms that are proving successful for your campus this year?
Lauren, I can give one example. In the last year, and we're doing it again, we were very surprised at the success of our parent campaigns on Snapchat. I could not believe that. And I dug into it a little bit, and the vendor was talking to us about how the parents have a Snapchat account because they're monitoring the student, right? They want to be on the platform, but we found a lot of response and success on Snapchat to the parents directly.
Interesting. Any others that are
Yeah.
standouts this year?
I'll kind of piggyback on what Caitlin said, and it was where my brain went. First and foremost, not necessarily a change in platform or a different platform outside of what you mentioned, but a really focused and concerted effort on parents for our UG Main. And we've done that across pretty much every platform that we are on, and that has proved to be beneficial for us, just targeting the parents.
We also started using TikTok, and the students, our student ambassadors, really control that. And it's really picked up a lot of popularity amongst the campus and the community. And we'll hear, weeks or months later that someone will say, "Oh yeah, I saw you do that dance," or, they kind of look around, and it's just become something that took the administration a little longer to kind of warm up to, but with the students engaging in most of that, it's become successful.
Awesome. We have another question from the group. So this one is more about the lingo and language that we're using within our social media posts and relating to this group. So what methods do you use to, first of all, understand their top of mind concerns? And then when you're creating your comm pieces, do you try to speak their language? How frequently are you trying to mimic how kids talk these days, especially when you're using TikTok? And is it something that you're doing? Why or why not? Does anybody want to jump in on this one?
I think you have to be
Oh, go ahead.
careful with that. It's almost like you want to relate to them, but you also don't want them responding or emailing you in text speech or in their acronyms that they use. So I think it's a delicate balance that we use. We try to keep text messaging very short and not do the full paragraphs, but like maybe a sentence or two. But in our social media, we keep it short, but we don't really speak their language, if that makes sense. But we do keep it short in ways that they understand it and not wording that's strictly like higher ed level speak.
The majority of our students are first generation, and so the language that we use is more probably just more general. So we make sure that people understand, our audience understands what we're asking, and we're not excluding anybody or causing any confusion.
Mhm.
Our postcards that go out, those are directed more towards the students, and we do use some language that they would use. But it's basic, and it's not like our formal lookbook or any of the communication. Once they're admitted and they go through that process, it is a much more formal look and concept. But as we're attracting them and trying to show them what the university looks like, we do tailor that more to kind of that age range.
One of the things that we found is when we're trying to explain procedures, we've done a short video, playlists, breaking the procedure down and having a student explain it, rather than do here are the steps you have to do 1 through 12, in an email. And that's been very successful because they're just naturally explaining it in a way that I think is heard differently.
Yeah, I love that. Well, let's talk about the other group that we're recruiting right now, which is the parents of our first year freshmen. And I know that it's been a hot topic over the past several years, and we all know that it's vital. So tell me, and Jonathan, we'll start with you this time. What kind of parent-specific outreach are you doing that's working well? And when does it start? At what point in the funnel are you guys really picking up with parent communication?
Yeah, it's interesting. You think back 10, 15 years ago and you look at who was most influential in a student's decision to enroll at an institution, and mom and dad were 5 and 10 respectively. And now they're 1 and 2, right? What was 10 is now 1. Mom is the most influential, followed by dad. So where do we start in the funnel? As early as we can, right? So if they're willing to give us the parent data, and we can capture that. We don't require the parent data, especially for like an inquiry. But if we can get that parent data, we're going to take it as quick as we can, and we're going to start communicating with them pretty quickly. Our outreach to parents is pretty vast. Everything from text, if they'll allow it, to postcards. We always jokingly say on the postcard, if we can get their attention for 10 seconds between pulling it out of the mailbox and taking it to the trash can, or the recycling can, we want to do that. So it is huge for us. And we've also noticed too, making videos, particularly for parents of younger, of younger parents, if you will. We've noticed a good uptick in the views on those kind of, unlisted videos on YouTube. So for us, it's way up there in terms of how we're communicating. We work with a couple other, vendors as well that are helping us communicate to parents, and having parent portals that, parents can log into and talk with other parents. We found that whenever the parents are able to talk to each other, for some reason they get a little bit more comfortable. There's a few exceptions to that, but in general, they become a little bit more comfortable with their student attending the institution.
Awesome. Joanne, what about for your campus?
Definitely trying to engage the parents. I think the messaging has to be different as well. When you're talking about the parents, parents want more of an ROI and outcomes based. And then also what services are you providing for the student? So I think that's a little different with the messaging than what we focus on with students. Students is trying to capture their attention, capture their interest, get them to actually check us out. And parents are much more, what am I paying for? Especially now, given what we know the feelings are about higher education and the cost of a college education. So it's, what's my student's ROI? It's really pushing our 3+1 programs or 4+1 programs. How are we getting students engaged in these programs and telling the parents, hey, here's why a degree is going to be useful for your student. Here's why it's worth the investment that you and your student are going to make. Here are the outcomes. Here's what our students are doing after graduation. Here are the internships that they're doing while they're a student. We really try to push the cluster model that we have, where we really let students investigate other areas and how they tie together. And that's a really big push for parents. And I agree with the postcard. It's like, if you can catch their attention for 5 seconds, the student may not look at that postcard, but it's the parent that will say, oh, hey, wait, did you finish your application? They're saying you're missing something. Or did you know that so-and-so has an open house? Are we going to this? Which is sometimes a reminder that the student will say, oh yeah, I did register for that. Or it might be the parent saying, oh, I think we should go to this. I think we should check this out. So I think your messaging has to be different, and also your tactic. Parents are more likely to check email. So if you do a parent newsletter versus students are more likely to check text. So it's also your delivery for the parents as well.
Absolutely. Anybody else have anything else to add on parents before we like completely shift gears here? Okay, well, we're gonna switch over and we're gonna talk about data for a little bit. In enrollment management, we're always asked to do so much with a budget that sometimes makes it feel impossible. But we always figure it out, and usually it requires making some really data-driven decisions to optimize our campaigns and make the budget work. So Caitlin, we'll start with you on this one. How are you striking a balance between leveraging data for recruitment decisions and also maintaining that human-centric approach to the experience?
Sure. Well, they go hand in hand. You learn from the data to make your interaction more personalized. And so, despite Mason's size, we still read all of our apps by hand. And so they are reviewed in a holistic review process. We use both performance data and counselor feedback from the road to help inform our segmentation and messaging. We participate in surveys and, look at our email and ad performance to learn more about the needs, right? And so it just informs, particularly with what Joanne was saying about parents, I think we're learning more about what parents want to hear from these tools, from this data, and it's really helping us build a comprehensive plan for them. There's such, enormous influencers, right? So they have to be convinced that the outcomes are there in order to make the investment. And so that's sort of, we're doing it hand in hand.
Yes. Question from the audience. Has your relationship shifted with your communication and marketing departments with the admissions team? And if so, how? Caitlin, I think you guys have always been a pretty solidified team at GMU, but have you noticed any changes within that relationship?
I mean, our role used to be housed within admissions, and at Mason, they pulled it out and made it its own office. So we have MarCom, right? And then we're paired with a department that is sort of MarTech, right? In our Salesforce administrators and the technical teams. And so that works really well for us. We have content and communication planning meetings with the groups all the time. And so there's a lot of shared information going back and forth and ability to shift gears if we need to.
What about from our other panelists? Oftentimes we see marketing offices, admissions offices, and I think the overlap is becoming more and more every day, especially with the need to communicate one-on-one. What is that setup like at Cumberland's, Jonathan?
Yeah, so it has been as one department, kind of like Caitlin had shared previously. We moved it out under its own department, but I will say they're kind of in lockstep. They're involved in pretty much every meeting that that the enrollment teams have in virtually any capacity with any vendor, with anybody really, and it's to make sure that we're all talking the same language. And so it doesn't hurt when you all get along really well. But the team is built and structured, and actually a lot of the folks that are in our Marcom department were former admissions folks as well. So that's helpful too. They get the struggle.
Yeah. Joanne, what about on your campus?
For us, it's actually very easy because Marcom is actually in the same division. So I have the entire institutional marketing and communications team within, well, not within admissions, but we're all in the same division. And I think what I've seen more as campuses start to restructure or build things differently, your marketing teams are either under advancement or they're now coming under enrollment management, because advancement and admissions are the two biggest clients technically of your Marcom office. So it only makes sense. So we're very fortunate that our marketing and comms team and our admissions team work really well together. We have someone that's dedicated to enrollment marketing and communication. So that does all of our pieces, our digital pieces. So it really helps to have people who speak the language, but also speak the marketing language. So they're able to merge the two together and really create successful marketing and comm plans as well.
Fantastic. We've got another question from the audience. I love the way this one is worded. With the unsimplification of the FAFSA, how are you dealing with communications to parents and students about the delays in the FAFSA and the release of ICERs?
A lot of prayer.
Yes.
I think in all seriousness, it's confusing, right? So I've got a daughter who is a rising senior, and local high school did a FAFSA filing night. And I went to the school counselor and I said, "Hey, you do realize this was like 2 months ago, right at the beginning of October. You do realize that they can't." No, you got to understand they did this thing called prior a few years ago, and now they can fill out the FAFSA. And so I just, for grins and giggles, showed up because I wanted to see what happened. And it, as you can imagine, it wasn't great. But I think the hard piece is communicating to these families, especially those who may have, even though they may be first gen, they already have a kid in college. Well, this is the way we did it even a year or two ago, and that's already changed. And I think from I think a lot of institutions' perspective, how that's going to change. And I mean, I jokingly say prayer, but the poor financial aid office, when they're able to file these FAFSAs, if we didn't need to give them a lot of grace beforehand, we're really going to need to in January, February timeframe, because there's going to be a lot of work that they need to do to push out a lot of data that we all know has to be pinpoint accurate, right? Because heaven help, we mess that up in some way.
Jennifer, what about at Chaminade? How are you guys handling that communication right now? Are parents understanding what is going out from campus?
Transparency, and we're doing a lot of volunteering in the local high school. So setting up their IDs, where we can help, and then offering our services as well to those students and families once everything is available. We always kind of operated a few months behind. Our goal was to do everything a little earlier. This delay is probably, we've always performed a few months later. So the changes will take some time, but where we're at as far as communicating will probably be on par with where we've always been.
Awesome. Play into your strengths. What about, so when we're looking at this timeline and everything getting pushed back, What are the data points that you all are focusing on right now as heavy indicators of your admitted class and your applicant pool, where you might have been leaning on FAFSA, ICER completion data? What's really coming through as a strong point right now that you're using as an indicator?
I think for us, it's engagement. And, are they calling us, or are they answering when we call, or are they responding to a text message? Looking at open rates within your CRM for your emails, click-through rates. How long are they staying on websites? How long are they going? Are they on for 12 seconds and then they leave the site? Or are they on your homepage and then trying to see where they're going from the homepage or the link that you have? And then also looking at your visit programs. How many are coming to an open house? How many times have they come? Did they come for an individual visit and an open house? Or have they come to multiple open houses over the last 2 years? So for us, it's really digging into the data, I think, on a deeper level, earlier in the funnel or in the time frame than what we've done previously. So we might be looking more like March at this data. Now we're looking at it November, December, really digging into it earlier.
What about, the question that I keep getting and hearing from some of Capture's clients is, how is this going to impact our spring? And when we were looking at deposit deadlines and orientation event dates, have you all started thinking about that and making adjustments to timelines for those, adding additional events? What is the general feeling on campus right now about how this plays into yield specifically?
I mean, we're always monitoring it, right? I agree with Joanne. It's a lot about the student engagement, and trying to make sure that we're providing what they need and being able to track what they're looking at on the website, being able to understand how they're engaging. Just a shout out, the long-term engagement score is one of the best indicators we've found of future enrollment. So shout out to Capture. But obviously we're concerned about educating the students and the parents about the FAFSA changes. We also started in the fall educating our staff, right? Mason's a big place, and the student, particularly current students, are going to go to their advisor or their faculty member. And so we did a pretty extensive internal communications plan to let the faculty and staff know that we know they're going to go to them first. And so how to get those students to the right resources to get the correct information was a big part of our communication strategy.
Great. Okay. We have another question from the audience. Totally out there and not related to FAFSA, but we're going to go ahead and answer it before we start running out of time. The question from the audience now is everyone on here using Slate? And if not, what CRMs are you using? Caitlin, what's George Mason using?
We are on TargetX on Salesforce.
Jonathan, what about Cumberland's?
Yeah, we just transitioned to Slate about a year and a half ago.
What about Chaminade?
We are on Slate.
And Joanne?
We are Slate as well.
Yep. We hear them all across the board here at Capture. And certainly we work with a lot of different ones. Slate does feel sometimes like it's the one that everybody is going to, but I've heard some good things about some other players out there lately. So I'm excited to see how the field shifts, especially with a couple of others that are playing a lot in AI. Okay. So while COVID, it shook things up for us, it's also fostered an environment where campuses are able to test out a lot of new technology, sometimes in a faster time frame to adapt to the needs of the population. And let's be honest, there's a lot of really cool products and software out there. So what are the specific emerging trends in technology that you foresee having the most significant impact on college enrollment and recruitment in the next 5 years? Joanne, we'll start with you on this one.
I think it's going to be your digital strategy, to be very, very honest. It's a lot of how are you using AI? How are you leveraging your website? How are you leveraging your SEO, your geo-targeting, your geofencing? I think it's, whereas I would say probably 75% of our attention was focused on getting the student here and then delivering everything to them once they were here, we now have to change that percentage of how do we get them interested before they come here? We know a lot of students aren't even visiting anymore until they get their acceptances. And now they're going to the accepted student days versus your general open houses in the fall. So how are you getting them to that accepted phase without them even coming to campus? So I think we're seeing a lot of investments in virtual tours and a lot of investments on websites and being interactive on your website, chat boxes, whereas some schools had chat boxes before, now you're seeing them almost every website. And how are they able to engage with actual people, or are you using AI technology on your chat boxes? So I think it's just a lot of digital strategy that I think is going to be used now.
I would also add just the personalization. So I have a senior now going through the process. So it's always fun to see what everyone else is doing too, and kind of compare yourself to others. But one of the things that I'm noticing is the personalization and tailoring to his interests, or even in virtual visits or on campus visits or events. The students, prospective students and families, really picking what they're interested in. And it's no longer a one size fits all. It's like each individual experience is going to be unique, and it's going to tailor to the areas and the topics of their interest. And that goes even into the communications that we do in the mailings as well at the very beginning, like, hey, we know you, and then how we carry that on all the way throughout the process.
Absolutely. Our audience wants to know, how are you currently using AI, and what plans do you have, if any, to use AI in the future? Anybody hopped on board?
Yeah, I will say probably not the way that you're thinking. There's really two ways that we have kind of embraced it, and that is to start as a starting point for job descriptions, which is not necessarily something on the enrollment side, but when you've got at least a basis to start from, sure does make things a lot easier. But we could even put old job descriptions in some of the AI like Chat GPT, and it will mimic what those are, and then we can change and adjust, what we want to add or take away. And then the other piece is, that we're using AI on is trying to get, we know through work, what students typically enroll at the University of the Cumberlands, right? What the makeup is. For us, a lot of time, the hard piece was finding those students. Like we knew who enrolled, but it was going out and finding what the demographic makeup may be of the family. And there are some AI tools out there that will allow us to really focus in and hone in on that demographic makeup of families in different geographic areas, where we can then do some more specific targeting for those families particularly.
Absolutely. And we have an entire session on AI coming up next with Rajiv Arora, top 3 ways AI is reshaping recruitment marketing. So I'm sure we'll pull in a lot of great ideas from that session too.